world changes, we'll keep you up to date. News Talk KVNU 102 FM 610 AM. Also on the new KVNU mobile app.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by the Duck Hunter. Chicks, ducklings, and rabbits are adorable, but they make bad Easter presents. Dr. Jane Kelly, USU professor, who is also president of the Utah Veterinary Medical Association, said these animals are often returned or abandoned quickly when children lose interest. Families often do not anticipate the time needed to care for them.
Having an animal of any kind is a big commitment. I mean, it's a years-long commitment. You know, maybe people don't realize that ducklings grow up into ducks that can live 8 to 10 years in some cases. So giving a duckling, unless you know that the recipient, has that commitment for that time period, is not a great idea.
She said biting and scratching can also be issues, especially in the uncomfortable grip of a young child.
They're very fragile, and if you give just one duckling or one chick, they also they're flock animals, and they can become lonely and distressed, and they're also quite fragile, so they can be inadvertently hurt by handling by small children, even though they, of course, don't mean to hurt the duckling or the chick or the baby bunny.
Another caution from Dr. Kelly, don't put these little animals close to your face.
Right. Yes, because of disease transmission, in case they nip or peck. We don't want to be kissing our ducklings and chicks or bunnies, no matter how cute, even though we're all tempted, particularly young children.
USU professor Dr. Jane Kelly. KVNU News Time is 5:07. KVNU weather for tonight. Rain showers this evening, then rain likely and a chance of snow after midnight. Little or no accumulation. Low in the lower 30s. Southwest winds 10 to 20 miles an hour early in the evening. Chance of rain and snow showers Friday morning, then a slight chance of rain and snow showers in the afternoon. Mostly cloudy. High around 50. We do have a hard freeze watch in effect for Friday night, Saturday morning. Cold temperatures could be below 30 degrees as things clear off Friday night. Our high today has been 49. It's 45 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Napa Auto Parts. When you buy Napa, you're getting the best parts. If you need a new battery or wiper blades, pull into any of the 5 locally owned Napa stores. They will even help you install them. 5 locations from Preston to Providence.
John at the Duck Hunter asks, have you ever checked the dryer vent cover on the outside of your home? It could be broken, full of lint, or worse yet, you could have an unwanted guest living in it. John suggests you check your dryer vent today. And if you can't, call John at the Duck Hunter. He'll do a visual inspection, and if needed, run a camera through the dryer vent line to see what's going on in there. For a free consultation, call the Duck Hunter, 770-4813.
We are the Duck Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duck Hunter.
KVNU News Time is 5:08. Over 9,000 children in Utah were found to be victims of abuse and neglect during fiscal year 2021, according to the Department of Human Services, Division of Child and Family Services, with 55% of supported allegations involving neglect. High stress, substance abuse, social isolation, and lack of support in parents are among the most common risk factors associated with child abuse and neglect. Governor Cox signed a declaration this week recognizing April as Family Strengthening Month in Utah and how important community services and supports are in preventing child abuse and neglect. Tracy Gruber, executive director of the Utah Department of Human Services, said they need Utahns to continue to report abuse and neglect when they see it, and said that we must look at how we can strengthen families at a point before they reach that level of crisis where abuse and neglect occurs. Research shows that families who demonstrate certain protective factors, including knowledge of child development, strong social connections, and access to concrete supports like housing and financial assistance, are better able to navigate stressful times. And a North Salt Lake man who was last seen in Provo on January 1st has been found deceased, according to authorities. The Provo Police Department reported 41-year-old Andrew Gullidge left a Provo hotel on New Year's Day and did not return. Investigators received a tip that Gullidge was seen hiking on the Y Mountain Trail, and they used a drone to search the area. With improved weather conditions, they were able to locate human remains, according to a report from the police department. The medical examiner's office has since identified the remains as Gullidge. Authorities did not specify a cause of death. KVNU News Time is 5:10. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
News Talk KVNU, 610 AM at 102.1 FM.
Here's Chad Norton, the lawn doctor, with a tip for your lawn.
Warmer temperatures have both weeds and grass competing for space in your yard. Dandelions, thistle, clover, morning glory will all be kept under better control when you have us applying pre-emergence and weed control. At the same time, we can feed your grass to make sure it wins the battle and keep it lush and growing all season long. Regular visits from the lawn doctor will help your lawn be healthier and pest-free.
Fertilizer, weed, and pest control. Call Chad Norton, the lawn doctor, at 753-LAWN. Follow them on Facebook or go to LawnDoctorCashValley.com.
The temperature's warmer, and here at Alpine Home Medical, we couldn't be happier to serve you as we mark our 25th anniversary this spring. Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent, and I want to thank you for being the best customers over the last 25 years. We couldn't have done it without you. If you've shopped with us before, thank you. If not, we want to make sure that we're your one-stop shop for all your home medical needs. You'll find the most selection and best quality products. Check out our power scooters for better freedom to help you move around and get you where you need to go easier. With compression socks, CPAP supplies, and incontinence products, our resupply team ships discreetly to your home, where you need it, when you need it. You get it all in unmarked boxes to protect your privacy. Alpine Home Medical has 10 locations across Utah and southern Idaho to serve you. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com. That's alpinehomemedical.com.
United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and America's largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal law enforcement agencies through our many varied programs, including free safety equipment donations, free officer survival training, cash donations, and condolence letters to the family of law enforcement officers who perished in the line of duty. USDSA also offers college scholarships for the dependent children of law enforcement, along with a citizen awareness program and thank you cards to law enforcement. These are just some of the ways United States Deputy Sheriff's Association assists America's law enforcement and the citizens they serve. For more information about United States Deputy Sheriff's Association or to see how you can help, visit www.usdeputy.org. United States Deputy Sheriff's Association, taking training to the next level because lives are on the line.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Hour 2 of today's show went Thursday, April 14th. This doesn't happen very often, and I don't really know if it's good radio or not to talk about it, Bill, but I like to just kind of tell our listeners what's going on. But unfortunately, we had a guest have to cancel for this opening segment on short notice. And for very good reasons. No emergency, anything like that. Our guest is fine, but we're definitely going to reschedule this one because it's. You may have noticed this theme popping up this week on the show, and it hasn't been planned at all. It's a theme that has popped up because, as you know, we always try to do here on the show. We see the news that's catching everybody's eyes. We see the stories that are getting the most attention and discussion. Then we try to find a guest that fits with that. And then we try to, stay on top of current events with everything going on in the Valley, from, 5K fundraiser races to our conversation last week with Julie Hollis-Terrell and the latest from the Cash Visitors Bureau. Normally, that leads to, no common theme. It leads to a lot of very different discussions and a colorful week of topics, some that interested some people and not others, and vice versa. Other topics that get a lot of attention from a crowd that didn't care about the guest on Tuesday's show, but they love Thursday's show. What I've noticed popping up again and again, and maybe you've noticed it, Bill, but having to sit here and listen to me yammer. That's a word, isn't it? Yammer.
Yammer on.
Yammer on every day, 5 days a week. It's impossible not to notice this, for me at least. I don't know if listeners are picking up on it. I don't know if you are, Bill, but it almost seems like, here as we near the end of the week, and again, we've spoken to all these different guests for different reasons. We had Dr. Frank Howe on because he's chairs that Logan River Task Force, and they're raising some concerns about this proposed development. Tomorrow on the show, we'll have one of the partners in this two-person development firm behind the development. They'll talk about, the sort of their side of things heading into this, the end of the public hearing or public comment period from the Army Corps of Engineers, and a potential public hearing that'll be coming up, at a future date. We had candidates on yesterday that where this thing came up again and again, no matter what we were talking about. We talked about budgeting, we talked about taxation, we talked about roads and infrastructure. And in all of these different segments on the show, it's almost like we've planned this theme for the week of growth. As if I'd announced on Monday, and believe me, I don't think this far ahead. I don't plan this thoroughly. But it's almost as if I announced on Monday, all right, we're going to spend a week talking about every facet of growth, the challenges it brings, how fast it's coming or not. And but that wasn't the goal. The goal was a lot more haphazard. The goal was to get to these candidates. The goal was to talk to Frank Howe about some of the things I was seeing online in opposition to a development, a large development, admittedly, that would replace some wetlands. The goal of bringing in the other side of that, speaking with the developers themselves tomorrow, or one of the partners in that developing firm, at least, and those are the specific goals. But in the end, we end up with this broad week of growth-related guests and topics and discussions. The reason I bring this up, so we had planned to speak with a representative of a state agency that is grappling with this in a way that really you wouldn't think of, and that is the Department of Workforce Services, and they're launching some new initiatives that are things never tried before here in Utah. But the reason they're doing it, and the reason they were going to join us today, and again, unfortunately, at last minute, the representative of the northern Utah area of the Department of Workforce Services that was going to join us, Tom Monson, is not going to be able to join us, and he has a very good reason. So no hard feelings, but he's agreed we'll reschedule this for sometime next week. But what Tom was going to talk to us about is the Department of Workforce Services. They're also, something you would think would be kind of unrelated to, growth as we traditionally understand it. The housing market, infrastructure concerns, crowded roads, crowded neighborhoods, loss of open space and agricultural land. But at the same time, the gains of more housing, places for everyone's children to live as they age and start families of their own. They don't have to leave the valley. That's where the majority of this growth is and will come from. It's not migration from out of state or out of the valley even. There's a lot of that, but that's not the primary driver of the growth. You wouldn't think intuitively about workforce services when talking about growth. And that's what really hammered this home to me, that almost every developing story, interesting conversation we can have with a guest, or even just between, Bill and I and listeners here on the show, the reason growth is coming up again and again is that almost every story, every development, every interesting conversation that you can have right now in Utah about current events, in public policy especially, is for the most part related to growth. Not everything, of course, but most of it. And so Workforce Services, what they'd planned to do was they're going to be rolling out some new initiatives. And the goal of this is twofold. And this part I can talk about. Again, we'll invite Tom back on next week. He had to cancel last minute today. He was very apologetic and had a good reason, again, but very good reason. But that was not his fault. It was the governor's fault, actually. So you can't tell the governor no. But we're gonna reschedule this for early next week. And but what he was going to talk to us about is these two new directions that Workforce Services is going to start going more and more often, and they're geared towards entirely two things. And this is such an interesting labor statistic, and I don't claim for a second to understand what this really means, but it's two single data points that labor statistics nationally and here in Utah from our own state statistics hold up again and again and again and again and again. And what those 2 points are, younger people are staying in jobs a far shorter period of time than the previous generation, which was already so you had baby boomers who their job that oftentimes that they got out of high school or college was their career, and other than maybe some unexpected, an unfortunate layoff, disagreeing with the boss leads to getting fired or having to quit, and you go find. But they stayed in that field. Generally, would find work in a comparable company doing similar things. That was the baby boomer generation. But the majority of baby boomers started a job after high school or college and retired from that job. That is the complete opposite of what labor data suggests of the workforce today. And that's presenting some challenges. What that means is that, so, for example, you had a bit of a shrinkage on that. I think it was Generation X. The kids of the baby boomers, they were staying in jobs, 10 to 15 years. Baby boomers were, throughout their working career, retiring from often the job they got just out of high school or just out of college. Along comes Generation X. They're staying 10, 15 years, but they're a lot more willing than their parents to jump ship and change careers, not only just to switch to a different company, but to also leave the field entirely and go into something else. And that was kind of a bit of a shock to the system because everyone had assumed the way baby boomers were doing it is the way of labor. So Generation X comes along and suddenly people are kind of scrambling like, oh, wait a minute. Then comes the millennials. And they're staying in jobs, an average, again, held up in labor statistics each and every year. Millennial-aged people, workers, are staying in jobs an average of 5 years. So baby boomers, until retirement, most of them. Generation X, 10, 15 years, they'll quit that job and find something new. Maybe not a new field, maybe the same field or same career track, but they'll jump ship and go to a different company because of a better offer. They'll toss it and go back to school or a trade school or get an associate's degree or something and change careers 10, 15 years in. That's new, and it was shocking. Then the millennials come along. Millennials are staying 5 years in a job. 5. Now here we are with a growing chunk of the workforce in the Gen Z crowd, and this is roughly people. It's technically, I think, 25 and younger right now, but I think you'd be safe even going up to 30 and younger. Looking at these labor statistics that Tom sent along ahead of the planned interview today, which, again, he had a really good reason to cancel. The governor called a meeting. So what we were going to talk about today is this. The data nationally and here in Utah. This isn't a Utah thing, but it is showing up in Utah data as well. Generation Z, when they're graduating college, now again, it's a young generation, so we only have a few years to look at for Generation Z. But so far, in the 3 years of data that you can find for Generation Z, they are changing jobs on average between 1.5 to 3 years. That is, if that holds up, and there's reason to believe it will. This is what Tom was going to talk to us about. Data in the earliest years of a workforce, as they're leaving high school and college, has traditionally at least held true throughout. So, for example, millennials staying in jobs an average of 5 years, that held true for millennials even as they aged. You've got now 45-year-old or 40-year-old millennials that, on average, the 5-year mark are still changing jobs at 45. That's holding up. So if that rings true for Generation Z, you're looking at a workforce that is staying in a job 1.5 to 3 years. And the data suggests it's not because they're immature. It's not because they are in different fields and careers than any previous generation was, and that's the nature of it. I mean, there's some of that, a lot more software development and stuff like that, where things are high turnover anyway and high stress. But production can also be high turnover and high stress and didn't impact the overall data numbers this severely. It suggests that when it comes to Generation Z, employers are going to have to really woo them. Baby boomers were happy to have a job. Generation X, happy to have a job, but willing to leave it if it got bad enough. Millennials, there's a lot of jobs out there. We better see eye to eye or I'm out of here in, on average, 5 years. Along comes Generation Z, and they're basically saying, and this is the challenge for workforce services and for employers, Tom said, Generation Z is basically saying, there are so many jobs out there, I could have a new one by Monday. And so it's presenting a challenge to employers that to keep them, as they train and educate themselves into a powerhouse of a workforce, as every generation does as they age into those college years, they're going to be needed. And employers are going to have to meet this challenge. How do you keep workers willing to change jobs that often working at your company? So we'll reschedule this interview for the future, but if you want to see some of this data that basically sets up this whole question I've just laid out, I've linked to it on our Facebook page. We'll try and reschedule this with Tom for Monday or Tuesday of next week, so stay tuned. We'll have an announcement on that by tomorrow's show. We'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Easter brunch at Hamilton's at the Club. That's right, Hamilton's at the Country Club is hosting Cache Valley's premier Easter brunch at the Logan Country Club from 10 till 2. This wonderful Easter brunch is open to the public. Enjoy the one-of-a-kind location at the mouth of Logan Canyon. Enjoy a buffet with fresh entrees that everyone will love. Make your reservations today by calling 753-6020. That's 753-6020. Sunday Easter brunch at Hamilton's at the Country Club.
This month we have an extraordinary opportunity to celebrate the grandeur and beauty of our planet Earth. From April 20th to the 23rd, Valley Recycling in Logan will host its annual Earth Day celebration. Bring in and recycle your scrap metal items to receive the highest prices of the year. Never in the Earth's history has recycling been more critical and impactful. Visit valleymetalrecycling.com for pricing and other information.
Hi, I'm Dr. Anita Chandra with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Helmets are important for every bike ride, no matter how short. Did you know helmets are also important to wear when skateboarding, inline skating, or riding a scooter? A helmet can protect against a skull fracture or other facial injuries. Look for a helmet that fits correctly and that's certified for safety. Make sure you and your child wear a helmet every time. For more, visit healthychildren.org or talk with your pediatrician.
Welcome back to KBN News for the People. It is, this is a topic that you don't want to be Chicken Little about stuff, because I think that presents a certain point when there's too much. Oh my gosh. I think it starts to become white noise. And so I think we, and by we, I mean all of us as residents, but also when I say we in this perspective, I'm talking about our public officials, policymakers, leaders who have a voice and a megaphone. I think we need to avoid being alarmist about the drought, because I think that if that becomes the norm, the alarm, the heightened state of awareness and all that can become a bit tiresome for people. And I don't think anyone in Utah, well, there's probably a handful, but I doubt many Utahns are the type that would, just, I'm not conserving water. You can't tell me what to do. I think the majority of Utahns would care about our state. We care about water. We care about the environment. We care about this being something that holds up for generations. The beauty of Cache Valley. We don't want to see the Logan River or the Blacksmith River, polluted and overdeveloped into oblivion. No one wants to see that. Bear River either, even though it's not as pretty as the Logan. And I just say that to try to start a fight with our listeners over there in the West. No, it's not something that I've never met a Utahn that didn't care about these things, ever. And so it's there in us innately. But if the talk of drought, if the talk of emergency, if the talk of the dire situation becomes, such an elevated and constant thing, I think we saw a little bit of this during the pandemic. I think there were a lot of folks who they were not anti-vaxxers. They were not anti-maskers. The protesters out there calling cloth masks tyranny. Those were the outliers, the extremists. And there were some on the other side, too, people who felt that you needed to be wearing a mask while jogging alone in the park and were yelling at people not making that choice. So you had extremists, I think, not equally on both sides, but there were some on both sides. And then in the middle, I think you had normal people going about their lives, doing what we do, whatever that is, career-wise, raising kids, enjoying dogs, going on vacations, hanging out with family and friends, all the things we do to occupy our time. And we're trying our best to do as much of that as we feel safe doing during a viral pandemic. And then I think there was this point where even, again, rational people that weren't screaming about mask tyranny or vaccines making you magnetic or things like that, or we're not out in the park shouting down those who were not wearing a mask while jogging alone outside. The rest of everyone, I think there was this fatigue that kind of set in to the headlines, to the phrasing of the news stories around COVID-19, maybe even to the words COVID-19 itself. And this fatigue sets in, and I think it becomes this white noise. It becomes, it starts to all blur together, and then I think it's very human nature to start getting a little tired of that, and you stop thinking about it as much, and maybe that means you get a little more careless. You're not callous, You're not intentionally going out to put neighbors who might be diabetic or have a heart condition or anything like that at risk by, increasing the potential for spreading this virus. But you're fatigued. You've forgotten to think about it so much because you've been thinking about it so long. I think we run that risk a little bit with the drought. And the reason I say that is that some surveying has been done by the Utah Foundation on this, Utah's attitudes towards drought. And it's been interesting, the trajectory of these surveys have shown, starting out last year, first part of the year, Utahns were responding saying, yes, this is severe, this is a crisis, we need to make some very, very quick changes. Towards the summer, same thing, it feels even worse now. Toward the end of summer, same thing, but we're nearing the end of our highest water use season. Maybe things will be okay. Maybe the winter will be better. Then winter comes along. How are you feeling about, low snowpack heading into this new water year? We're probably going to see more restrictions necessary than last year. Are you okay with that? Survey respondents majority? Yeah, sure. Then along comes the Utah Foundation Spring Survey, which was just conducted last week, and they put the results out today. And it shows that Utahns have, I believe, maybe hit that point where, again, not that they don't care, not that we want to see our rivers polluted or overdeveloped beyond recognition, but we've reached a point where I think people are fatigued on crisis. And they're basically saying in their survey responses, do what you need to do. Just don't talk to me about it. If we need more reservoirs, build them. But no, I don't want to hear about it. I won't be at a public hearing. Survey respondents basically saying, yes, this is important. Yes, government needs to act. Yes, we all need to do our part, especially those cities in southern Utah, to be realistic about the desert state we live in and conserve water. Everyone's on board with that kind of stuff. What no one seems to be on board with here in the spring, a year after the very first drought emergency order from the governor, which was necessary to get some federal funds coming Utah's way, a year later, respondents in the Utah Foundation survey saying, just stop talking to me about it. Do everything you need to do. Raise my taxes if you have to. I'm not kidding. That's one of the survey responses. I would support that. But I don't want to have to constantly think about this. I don't want to have to constantly hear about this. That comes on the heels of officials throughout the West weighing some pretty compared to last year and compared to wetter years in general, of course, officials in the West are weighing some pretty hefty emergency actions. And as Utah Foundation points out, this might come as a shock to people who have reached that drought discussion, drought news story, thinking about drought fatigue. But these restrictions might be coming our way, even here in northern Utah. We'll talk about what they, again, maybe might be this summer. Nothing official at this point, just what state, federal, county, and city officials are trial ballooning as things that might pop up this summer as we head into the second year of a pretty severe drought. That's on the other side of these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:37, and the news is brought to you by Roof Rescue. A hard freeze watch is in effect from Friday evening through Saturday morning for the Utah portion of the Cache Valley. Hard freeze conditions could harm or kill early agriculture in the Cache Valley and potentially damage unprotected outdoor plumbing. Take steps now to protect tender plants from the cold. To prevent freezing and possible bursting of outdoor water pipes, they should be wrapped, drained, or allowed to drip slowly. Those that have in-ground sprinkler systems should drain them and cover above-ground pipes to protect them from freezing. More on the forecast for tonight in just a moment. A single vehicle crash this afternoon injured one woman and shut down a stretch of US 8991 on the south side of Logan. The crash was reported around 1:10 p.m. near Polson Trailers. Logan City Police Chief Gary Jensen said a Cache Valley woman was driving a Honda Pilot northbound near 2900 South. The SUV drifted off the side of the road and clipped a power pole. It then rolled and crashed into a fence. Jensen said the woman had non-life-threatening injuries. She was treated by paramedics and transferred to Logan Regional Hospital. The damaged utility pole dropped power lines across both lanes of the highway. Electricity was also knocked out to the neighboring area. Both northbound and southbound traffic along the highway was detoured for more than an hour while crews cleared the crash. Jensen said police are investigating the cause and why the driver drifted off the highway. Closing arguments in the murder trial of a Utah man accused of killing two teenagers wrapped up last evening. Jared Baum is charged with murdering 17-year-old Breezy Otteson and 18-year-old Riley Powell in 2017. He allegedly stabbed the couple to death and dumped their bodies down a Eureka mine. Fox 13 reports that after over a month of trial, the case is now in the jury's hands. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the testimony of Morgan Lewis, formerly known as Morgan Henderson, who was Baum's girlfriend at the time of the murders. She told police she was there for the kidnappings and the murder and watched him dispose of the bodies and evidence. Utah County Attorney Christine Scott's closing statement reminded the jury of the gruesome details Lewis shared when she testified last month. Prosecutors said Riley and Lewis had a previous relationship, which was Baum's motive to attack Riley and Breezy. Baum's defense team argued Lewis's credibility is not to be trusted, saying blood and DNA evidence don't match up with her story. The jury deliberated for 3 hours last night and wrapped up around 8 p.m. One person has been killed following a plane crash in Hayburn, Idaho, east of Burley. Hayburn police were among the first responders dispatched to the call of a plane crash at 8:36 a.m. Upon arrival, they found a plane crashed onto the roof of a potato processing plant, the Gem State Processing. According to officials, the Cessna 208 Caravan carrying UPS freight was en route from Salt Lake City and was flying too low while attempting to land at Burley Municipal Airport. The pilot and sole occupant of the plane died in the crash. None of the Gem State Processing employees were injured. KBNU News Time is 5:41.
My name is Gloria Nadal, and I chose Roof Rescue. They exceeded my expectations because they were able to follow through with the insurance company, establish a rapport, and ultimately the insurance company took responsibility and paid for my roof to be replaced. The products that they use were top-notch. My roof is beautiful. I would recommend them over and over again. My name is Gloria Nadal, and I encourage you to choose Roof Rescue.
KVNU weather, other than the hard freeze watch for tomorrow night. For tonight, rain showers likely this evening, then rain and a chance of snow after midnight. Little or no accumulation. Overnight low in the lower 30s. Southwest winds 10 to 20 miles an hour early this evening. Chance of rain and snow showers in the morning. Slight chance of rain and snow showers in the afternoon on Friday. Mostly cloudy, high around 50. It was 49 today. It's 45 right now at KBNU. U&I Furniture is stocked up with a wide inventory. Lots of chairs, lots of variety. There's a good chance they have what you're looking for. Always a better buy at U&I, 28 West, 1st North, downtown Logan. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Dear Legacy House, thank you so much for the way you care for Dad. I'm sure you've discovered what a character Dad is. Oh, he loves to tell stories. Heck, some of them might even be true. Like the time he fell asleep in a train car in Logan and ended up in Preston before he could get off. Dad wasn't excited to leave his farm where he spent the last 55 years, but we're sure glad we chose Legacy House. And honestly, he's glad we chose Legacy House.
Stop by on 1400 North in Logan. Legacy House of Logan.
Hey folks, this is Gary Sullivan from At Home with Gary Sullivan. I hope you can join me this weekend as we talk home maintenance, repair, some remodeling, plus our project of the week that just might inspire you for a springtime redo. Best part is we take your calls about your home projects. Hope to talk with you this weekend on At Home with Gary Sullivan.
Saturday nights at 7 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM at 610 AM.
Our most vulnerable veterans are isolated at hospitals. And during their greatest time of need, their loved ones can have little or no contact with them. Imagine having to shelter in place forever. Learn how you can help at healvets.org. Help Heal Veterans, with the support of citizens like you, is making things better together. Learn more at healvets.org. This message is furnished by Help Heal Veterans, a not-for-profit organization.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Just before the news, they were talking about this concern I have about, crisis fatigue, going from, we're seeing the wind down of the pandemic here, and then, it's overlapped with the 2 worst drought years seen in a generation here in Utah, and heading into the second one this year. And then, who knows what after that, bees and locusts and...
Does Russia figure in?
Russia and Ukraine, with a lot of people thinking of the Cold War again, or even worse, World War III. It's not going to go there, but I sympathize with those who say, look, Putin seems a bit off his rocker of late. He can't guarantee that he'd stop at Ukraine if he was left unchecked. So I understand people. There's a lot to worry about, is what I'm getting at. It's justifiable worry too, but there is such a thing as crisis fatigue, and the problem with crisis fatigue is that it causes people to become complacent. And when you're talking about drought and water conservation, that's the last thing you want Utahns to be, is complacent. They don't get complacent because, as I said, they don't care about polluted rivers or overdeveloping rivers and lakes to the point that they're not unrecognizable, and our ecology is so imbalanced that everything leaves except us, and suddenly Cache Valley is a far less dynamic and pretty place to live. No one wants to see that, but you do get tired of having the same messages and warnings and headlines hammered into your head anytime you look at the news. And it's a human thing. It has a tendency to turn into white noise. And your brain, sort of to save you from going nuts, starts tuning it out. And so you stop thinking about it less. We saw this happen during the pandemic. We've seen this happen with, even really aggressive anti-drug campaigns. I think Nancy Reagan and This Is Your Brain on Drugs and Just Say No and all of that. There was fatigue that set in about that, to where it became white noise, and it was no longer effective on the children that were constantly being hammered with those messages. It meant nothing to them because they'd heard it too much. And that can happen as an adult too. So that concerns me, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that. So with that in mind, though, it is a pretty serious situation. Story at CacheValleyDaily.com on this. Western leaders, at this point, just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, and the federal government as well weighing in on this. What could be done? What are some of the options? So no official restrictions have been agreed upon or announced. There are some cities here in Utah and more in Colorado who have already said outright, we will be doing this. I can't remember the name now, which city it is, but there are 2 along the Wasatch Front that have already said to residents, basically, we will be on a 2 to 3 day watering schedule only, 2 to 3 days a week only throughout this entire water season. So basically, as soon as we turn the secondary pressurized system on, just be prepared for that water 2 to 3 times a week only, and only after 6 p.m. So, starting out that way, as opposed to, that's a pretty common restriction here in Utah, actually, by the way. But it usually doesn't kick in, until mid-end of July. In even the driest parts of the state. And so this year, some cities are starting out with those water policies. That's survivable. That's not going to kill anyone. That's not going to make anyone's life quality drop in a significant way. We'll be fine. Where things get a little scary, Glen Canyon Dam. And one of the reasons so we're pretty... We live pretty comfortable in the United States. I mean, Bill, I can't remember the last time, I don't know about for you, but I can't remember the last time I ever was walking through my house and went to flip a light switch and thought, oh, I hope there's electricity when I flip this switch. We don't think that way.
Generally not, no.
Yeah, it's not something we've had to deal with. If Glen Canyon Dam stops producing power, which it's literally on the verge of right now, it's about 1,000 feet from what is considered the lowest level in which power production from Glen Canyon Dam's turbines can be guaranteed. A quick reason for this. I wasn't sure myself. So those turbines are driven by the force of, that interaction between gravity and water. So the weight of the water pushes the water and then turns the turbines. as the level of the dam gets low enough, there's not enough weight to turn the turbines effectively, and power production slows down and eventually comes to a complete halt. Even though the dam itself is not empty, the turbines don't turn. And so 3,400 feet roughly is where that is, and they are close to it. If Glen Canyon Dam stops turning those turbines, 5 million people. This is just, I knew it served a lot. I had no idea. But again, you can read this at CashValleyDaily.com. 5 million people in roughly, let's see how many states here. I should have counted before we started today. A lot. 5 million people in, I'll just list them: Arizona, Colorado, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. 5 million people in all of those states. Not 5 million in each state. 5 million people spread throughout those states could lose power. And indefinitely. Because many of these systems, and there are multiple factors here, our power grid. This was a big debate that Senator Mitt Romney made a part of his reason for supporting the federal infrastructure bill when it passed. And one of the reasons he was a key negotiator with other Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the House is Romney pointed to things like this, pointed to our power grid in the United States, how far behind other countries we've fallen when it comes to smart grid technology and our grids leaking power and in need of repair so badly that we're already losing a lot there. And that was the focus of the infrastructure bill. Not the focus of the infrastructure bill is what to do if Glen Canyon Dam stops producing power and 5 million people in all of these states, including Utah, suddenly have zero electricity. At that point, you don't care how smart your electrical grid is. But one of the reasons you do care still is that your alternatives are not there. Many of these people, again, in the story at CashValleyDaily.com, Jack Schmidt, director of the Center for Colorado River Studies at Utah State University, talking about crisis management and some of the ideas being discussed when it comes to Glen Canyon, Lake Powell, and others, and the production of electricity through hydropower. Schmidt says many of these places, due to failing infrastructure or a complete lack of the infrastructure ever being built up in the first place by either the state or the federal government over the last 50, 60 years, means in many cities, if Glen Canyon Dam stops producing power, they stop having power. There isn't a backup. Now, this could be fixed quickly and temporarily, but it would be costly to do so. I couldn't find it. Bill and I were talking about this a bit. There's a map out there. I'll keep looking for it, and I'll post it to our Facebook page. But I used to have it bookmarked. It's a map that shows you where your electricity comes from. So here in northern Utah, we're all right, even with the drought. We've got multiple systems basically that do and can feed electricity into the grid here in Cache Valley. It's a combination of hydropower. Rocky Mountain Power, which is getting that from Wyoming, so that could be wind or coal or hydropower in Wyoming. A lot less hydropower in Wyoming because, there's less water, but even than Utah in 3/4 of the state. So it is a better situation here in the northern part of the state. In the southern part of the state, they are dependent on, many of those cities dependent on a single source for their electricity, and some of it Glen Canyon Dam. This is literally a potential citywide, or I guess town-wide, because we're talking small towns in southern Utah, but you're talking blackouts that could last through the summer. Unless emergency action is taken in some way. And so what's being discussed now, of course, there are other conversations happening on what could be done with the power grid itself. Could patches be erected quickly enough that would give areas in all of these states fed in part, at least, by the turbines there in Glen Canyon Dam. with an alternative power source, that would maybe at least get them through the year. Yes, that's going to be costly, and the debate right now, of course, is who pays for that. Is that a federal government thing? Is that going to require an act of Congress to appropriate some money for that quickly, or are states on the line for this? Considering that you're going to be talking about crossing a lot of state lines in many of these patchwork temporary grids that would be set up to feed power to some of these, power-stranded communities. And again, in all these states, Nebraska, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado. Yeah. And their Lake Powell, as it falls, is dangerously close to that 3,490 feet threshold where there's not enough weight to the water to push and turn the turbines effectively. Lake Powell actually fell to 3,525 feet for the first time in recorded history last month. So that's what has state water managers and, power grid managers, power companies, kind of a little freaked out about this right now. So what's being discussed? The crisis management options, as Jack Schmidt, again, of the Colorado River Studies Center at Utah State University said, there are some crisis management options. Lake Powell is serving as a bit of a barometer on the drought itself, but also the Colorado River's health and long-term future as both a natural thing and a recreational thing and a power-generating thing. So the discussion is centered around that mainly, but it does affect everything else. And what it comes down to, Schmidt says, is that, the biggest and best option they have is to keep 480,000 acre-feet of water in Lake Powell, enough water to serve about 1 million U.S. households. And that would, they believe, allow them to continue generating hydroelectricity through the dam, keeping the level still dangerously low, but above about 3,500 feet, 1,000 feet above when the turbines shut down. The problem with that, keeping 480,000 acre-feet of water in Lake Powell means a lot of communities suddenly with a lot less water than they'd planned on, even in a drought year. So then you're dealing with an issue where now, okay, you've got electricity, but say goodbye to those trees and shrubs, your lawn, and potentially look at rationing your drinking water. I mean, this is a pretty serious situation. It will pass, and that makes this complicated too. You're looking for temporary solutions, most likely. Long-term solutions as far as fighting climate change and planning for water, reservoirs and water conservation, of course. But right now it's a temporary scramble to get past the worst-case scenarios that could play out in a month in some areas of the state. Check it out. Full story on all of this. West officials weighing emergency actions at CashValleyDaily.com, and we'll be back right after this.
NMLS 1817019.
Zero. That's the amount of closing costs you'll pay with LendRight Mortgage's Freedom Loan. How can we do this? You'll pay enough interest over the life of the loan that we don't need to charge you thousands in upfront costs like every other lender does. Instead, LendRight gives you up to $12,000, which covers all of your closing costs and then some. Compare the Freedom Loan to the rate and fees you'd pay with any other lender. I guarantee you'll like what you see. If you're buying, get a 30-year APR as low as 4.5% and pay no closing costs with the Freedom Loan. Call 801-APPROVE or visit LendRightMortgage.com. Say no to closing costs. Get a Freedom Loan. Call 801-APPROVE or visit LendRightMortgage.com.
UNI Furniture is stocked up with a wide variety of home furnishings. You've heard us talk before about UNI's chair department, Chair Heaven. A big variety there means there's a good chance they're going to have the chair you're looking for. UNI also is your mattress headquarters, featuring Therapeutic and Maloof. In fact, UNI is a full-line Maloof dealer with all kinds of mattresses, headboards, adjustable bases, and even pillows and sheets. Also, try out the new Therapeutic Synthesis, a hybrid mattress with an inner spring and copper-infused memory foam. UNI has a big inventory in stock. It's ready for pickup or delivery. There's always a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aid technology. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Paul Danes by calling 753-HEAR or visit cachehearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
That's our time for today. Earlier in the week, you heard from Frank Howe representing the Logan River Task Force in raising concerns about a large proposed development that would replace wetlands. Tomorrow, the developers